Professor Moylan here. In this module, we get into basic branding concepts, and the brand is very, very much a part of the product. Sometimes it's the most important part of the product. And let's go ahead and start with our definition. A brand is a name, term, symbol, or any other unique element that identifies one firm's product and sets it apart from the competition. Brand marks, like the Nike swoosh, and trade characters like the Keebler elves are part of the branding process. And let's go ahead and look at a name, a term, a symbol. A brand name, of course, Nike. Nike is the brand name. Boy, it's hard to ever find the Nike brand all by itself without the ubiquitous swoosh, which of course is a brand mark. In fact, many, many times Nike doesn't even have the word Nike there. They just have the swoosh, the brand mark. That swoosh is synonymous with Nike. How about a brand term? And let's stick with Nike. Just Do It. Just Do It, that brand term is synonymous with Nike. And oftentimes, in addition to Just Do It, the term, you see the swoosh as well. How about this? Is this a brand? Yes, of course it's a brand. Air Jordan, or more accurately, Jumpman. This brand logo was created from this iconic picture taken of Jordan in 1984 in the run-up for the Olympic Games. Of course, Jordan has come to be one of the biggest brands in athletics. Another major brand, of course, is Apple, the ubiquitous Apple mark. Don't even need to say the word. You see that and you know that we're talking about the biggest company in the world. Apple was not the first personal computer. Here's the very, very first personal computer, Altair 8800. That's not a very good brand, Altair 8800. That's not why that company's not around anymore, but that brand name sure did not help. Apple's always been great at branding. Apple was their first brand. Their second brand was this one, the Macintosh from Apple. You can see the Apple logo down on the lower left-hand side, and the Macintosh, the first graphical user interface computer for the masses. Very, very different than that's the Altair 8800, clearly not for the masses. Okay, trade characters are part of the brand. Trade characters are non-human personifications of the brand, like the Michelin Man or Ronald McDonald. Now note, sometimes these can be played by humans. Clearly a very, very successful current trade character is the Geico Gecko. Over the years, Mr. Clean has been a very successful trade character for Procter & Gamble. Brawny, another very successful trade character. The Marlboro Man. So trade characters, of course, are part of the brand. Now let's talk about the difference between manufacturer brands and store brands. And this really gets to who owns the brand. Here are three brands: Planters, Fisher, Kirkland. Those are three brands of peanuts. Planters is a manufacturer brand. It's owned by the company that manufactures Planters. Fisher is also a manufacturer brand owned by the company that manufactures Fishers. Kirkland is a store brand. If you go into Costco, you'll see Kirkland peanuts. Costco owns that brand. They don't make those peanuts. Those peanuts are made by other companies. Some companies will make products for other companies, and the company that's the manufacturer, they won't put their name on it. They'll put somebody else's name. That's why it's known as a private brand or a store brand. In the peanut business, John B. Sanfilippo and Sons is a major private label manufacturer. Now, they make Fisher nuts under the Fisher brand. They own that, but they also make it under a number of private label brands. Sometimes these private label brands are called captive brands. Now, captive brands usually don't have evidence of the store's affiliation. Sometimes they do, but they usually don't. Now, they are sold exclusively at the chain, and often they're for higher prices than private label brands. Equate is the captive brand in Walmart. When they have an Equate product, they try to copy without violating any trademarks or patents, but they try to copy as closely as possible the manufacturer brand that they are copying. Sometimes captive brands are so good looking that you really can't tell that they're not a manufacturer brand, like this one. Let's talk about individual brands versus family brands. Now, with an individual branding strategy, you use different brand names for different products. This has long been Procter & Gamble's strategy. All of these are different brands that Procter & Gamble has. In fact, you never walk in and see Procter & Gamble real big on a product. You got to turn the product around and look at the small print in the back to see that it's a Procter & Gamble product, because they use lots of individual brands: Downy, Old Spice, Pantene, Secret, Braun, Luvs, and on and on and on. At one point, Procter had more than 30 individual brands that had sales in excess of $1 billion. They definitely believe in an individual branding strategy. The opposite then is a family branding strategy, where you market several different products under the same brand name. And if you really wanted to get into a debate about it, Procter has some of their brands that they're now doing a little bit more family branding. Crest would be a good example of that. There are a number of oral care products under the Crest brand name, but for the most part, Procter is pretty much into individual branding. On the other hand, Under Armour, they put that brand on everything. Lots of companies will use family branding where they put the same brand on everything, but a lot of them take this a little bit of a step further, and it's really known as umbrella branding. Now, with umbrella branding, you'll have that umbrella brand over the top, but then you'll have sub-brands underneath it. Now, what would be examples of umbrella branding? Well, Microsoft. They put the Microsoft name on everything, almost everything, but then most of their businesses have sub-brands. It's Microsoft Office, Microsoft Windows, Microsoft Xbox, Microsoft Bing. In fact, we could take Office. Office has sub-brands. It's Microsoft Office Excel, Microsoft Office PowerPoint, Microsoft Office Word. So there's really 3 separate brands all in there. Marriott uses umbrella branding. The name Marriott's on everything, but then they've got their sub-brands: Town Place, Fairfield Inns, Courtyard, Residence Inn, Spring Hill Suites. Each of their different sub-brands stands for a different kind of hotel property. Hilton does the same thing, although they don't always have Hilton in there. They usually do, but sometimes they have their other brands stand by themselves, like Hampton, Doubletree, Embassy Suites. They're not hiding the fact that they're owned by Hilton, but it's not quite as prominent. Let's shift gears from the hospitality industry to the auto industry. General Motors has a number of different brands, although GM is not really a promoted brand by itself. Again, we could get into debate: is GM truly a brand? They never have GM by itself on something. It's always Chevrolet or Buick or Cadillac, and so on and so forth. Ford, General Motors is the name of the company. Ford is the name of the company, but Ford is the dominant brand for a lot of their products. But then they've got some other brands: Lincoln, Mercury, and then a couple of brands that they've bought the businesses: Jaguar, Volvo, Land Rover. Now, with the Ford brand, in the auto industry, they typically have what's referred to as makes and models. Ford is the make, and then they've got a number of different models: Fiesta, Focus, Fusion, Mustang, Taurus, and on and on and on. Are those all brands? You're darn tootin' they are. They own those. If I tried to sell a car and call it a Taurus, Ford would sue me in a heartbeat. Okay, some other branding issues. Licensing. Licensing is when one firm sells the right to another to use a legally protected brand name for a specific purpose and for a specific period of time. What this means is the company owns a brand, but they're going to let somebody else use that brand. One of my favorite examples of this is Kit Kat. Who makes Kit Kat? Well, it depends where you are in the world. If you are anywhere but the United States, that product is made by Nestle. But in the United States, that product is made by Hershey. Why? Because Nestle owns the brand, but a long, long, long time ago, they signed a contract with Hershey that allowed Hershey to license that brand only in the United States. At the time that Nestle did that, they weren't very big in the United States, but that contract exists to this day. It's in perpetuity, and so it's a very valuable licensing contract that Hershey has. Let me give you a licensing example that you might be familiar with: the Boston Red Sox. The Boston Red Sox is in the business of playing baseball, selling tickets to baseball games, selling broadcast rights to baseball games, but they also make a decent amount of money on licensing their name to companies who will put that on hats, shirts, and so on. Same thing with the Patriots. Same thing with every major sports franchise. They use licensing because they've got a brand name that people want to buy hats and shirts. And of course, those companies don't want to be in the business of making and selling the hats and shirts, so they license their brand to others. Here's one of the nicest hotels in Waikiki, right there on Waikiki Beach. That is the Trump International Hotel. Trump licenses that name to a lot of operators, but Trump doesn't have a ownership interest in it, simply licenses the name because the name stands for something. Okay, another branding strategy is co-branding. Co-branding is when you put more than one brand on a product. So co-branding, two brands combined to create a new product, providing greater recognition or other strengths than either could achieve alone. Here's Crest with Scope. That's ingredient branding. There's an ingredient in there. That kind of co-branding is on the rise. Now, there are three types of co-branding. There's ingredient branding, cooperative branding, and complementary branding. Ingredient branding is when there's an ingredient in a bigger product and that ingredient is branded. NutraSweet was a very successful sweetener, and when they came out, they wouldn't let anyone use their product, buy their product, and use it if they didn't brand it on their package. So when Diet Coke came out with NutraSweet, it said, now with NutraSweet. Ingredient branding, here we've got Betty Crocker with Sunkissed Lemon in the lemon bars, or Betty Crocker with Hershey's chocolate in the chocolate brownie. That's ingredient branding. Intel Inside, you've got a lot of computers out there that have Intel Inside. That's ingredient branding, the ingredient, the Intel microprocessor, inside of the whatever brand of computer it is, Hewlett Packard, Dell, Lenovo, and so on. Here's another example of co-branding, cooperative branding, where Coke and McDonald's get together and jointly pay for some advertising, but that is also complementary branding because Coke and McDonald's hamburgers go well together. Oreo, mint Oreo inside the Blizzard. You know what? That's ingredient branding because you've got the Oreo ingredient in there. That is cooperative branding because they both throw some money into the advertising kitty. And that's complementary branding because they work well together. I bring this up to point out that it's not absolutely clear, delineated differences between ingredient, cooperative, and complementary branding. The key thing to remember is co-branding, more than one brand on the effort. A brand extension is when you take an existing brand and put it on a different type of product. But it's a little bit of a debate sometimes between, is this a brand extension or a line extension? For example, when Coors came out with Coors Light, was that just a line extension, another product in the same Coors line? Or was that a brand extension where they took the Coors brand and put it on a completely different product line? You know, it's such a closely related product line that it's kind of a waste of time to even have that debate. But here's a true example of a brand extension from Coors. Coors took the Coors brand and put it on a bottled water product. That is Coors Rocky Mountain Sparkling Water. This was terrible brand extension because people were confused. They looked at that and thought it must be some sort of alcoholic beverage, but it wasn't. It was just water. Coors put it on there because they thought that, well, Coors stands for clear, crisp, Rocky Mountain freshness. No, it doesn't. Coors stands for beer. This was a very failed brand extension. Speaking of failed brand extensions, KFC is chicken. Well, in fact, it's KFC. They changed the brand here in the United States from the old Kentucky Fried Chicken because fried is a dirty word. Now they go with KFC. But back in the 60s, Colonel Sanders, flush with success from Kentucky Fried Chicken, opened a chain of roast beef sandwich shops and called those Kentucky Roast Beef. Kentucky Roast Beef was not a success for the kernel. At Ore-Ida, we kind of had a brand extension, Goof, back during my tenure. Ore-Ida is almost entirely potato products, although they have put the Ore-Ida brand successfully on some other vegetable products, including this one that is still available, Ore-Ida chopped onions. But what we did in the 80s, big mistake, we wanted to introduce a line of fried chicken. We didn't want to pay to create a new brand, and so we simply took the Ore-Ida brand, deluded ourselves into thinking that Ore-Ida stood for fried foods, and came out with Ore-Ida brand fried chicken. Big failure, because of course Ore-Ida doesn't stand for fried chicken. It stands for, potatoes, or if you want to stretch it a little bit more, it stands for frozen vegetables. Tide, very, very successful laundry product from Procter & Gamble. They have brand extended that into a related but completely different business, Tide Dry Cleaners. Interestingly, the dry cleaner business does not have any national branded player, and so Procter & Gamble, trying to get into the service sector, took the Tide name and put it on some dry cleaners. Another Procter & Gamble product brand name that they have brand extended is Mr. Clean. Now, they've taken the Mr. Clean brand and put it on multiple cleaning products like Mr. Clean Magic Eraser. Is that a line extension or a brand extension? Again, kind of a waste of time to debate that. It's kind of like the Coors Light Coors debate there. It really wouldn't matter, but it clearly is a brand extension when they took the Mr. Clean and put it on car washes. Yeah, Mr. Clean Car Wash, that definitely is a brand extension. One of the more unusual brand extension was done by Black & Decker. Black & Decker announced that they were going to go into small appliances, and I remember reading that in Advertising Age, and I said to my marketing class at the time, this is going to be a huge failure for Black & Decker, and the reason is Black & Decker stands for power tools. It's a male-dominated brand. Their products are out in the garage. That is never going to be successful with small appliances like toaster ovens, in the kitchen. Well, I was full of it on that one. That has been a very successful product line for Black & Decker. Stouffer, frozen entrees, delicious lasagna. If you've never had it, give it a try. But Stouffer brand extended, they got into the hotel business. They since sold the hotel chain, and those have all been rebranded Renaissance. Star Wars, the movie. Now you can stay in the Star Wars hotel, or at least you can stay in it when it opens. Star Wars is a Disney brand, and Disney has always been very, very good at taking existing brands and squeezing as much out of them as possible, whether it's their characters like Mickey Mouse, or their properties like Disneyland, or their broadcast stations like ABC, or their cable stations like ESPN. Disney knows how to really get the most out of it. As they like to say, it was all started by a mouse, and look at how far, that mouse has gone. Branding is a very important part of P, product, the first of the 4 Ps.